Hello, all you amazing people of the internet, and Jason.
Hello.
Hope you're all doing amazingly well. It's really hard to do the point thing when you're looking the other way in a mirror image video selfie thing. Today, we are going to be getting stuck into Jason's Drift Falcon. This is going to be let's say a 3-day build. We'll aim for 2, but if it rolls into Saturday and ends up being 3 days, then so be it. So this is going to be us doing a budget drift car for Jason for $5,000. So a 2 or a 3-day build on a car for under $5,000. Yes, we got this car for nothing, but it does have a blown engine. It's super knocky, as you've seen in previous videos. So we'll just sort of call it, and Jason did have a motor, but let's just call it $500 as a baseline for the car with a good engine in it. And then we're going to start doing the tally from there. So let's get into it and I'll show you what's been going on. So we have been tinkering with this thing a little bit behind the scenes, just sort of gathering parts and all of that stuff, just waiting for things to get in, and between jobs and all that, when we've been here, we've been tinkering with it. Not a heck of a lot has changed. We've changed this door. I don't know if you remember, it had a big dent in it before and it looked like this. So that's that. The whole inside's had a good clean out and a bit of a detailing job inside. Got some second-hand extractors for it to go on later. But it's got some XR leather front seats in it now, and we've just sort of gone through and cleaned it up. It's got a rear view mirror on it now too, which it didn't before. We've put a window regulator in that driver's door, as that window did not work at all. So that's that. The bumper was stoved in down here, so we've sort of popped that out as well. So seems like a logical place to start would be with the engine. Obviously, this engine is knocking, so that would be the obvious place to start, especially because we've got the green top sitting over here. If you haven't seen all of the stuff we've done to this, check it out in a previous video. But we're not going to do that. We're going to start with steering and suspension stuff. So let's lift the car up, get some wheels off, and I'll show you what we're doing. So as far as the front end goes, we're going to be doing basically bugger all. We're going to be throwing a new set of front wheel bearings in it because of this. So that's not great. The other side is pretty much the same too. So we've got a couple of new hub and bearing assemblies here, which we're going to put in it. And we're also going to attempt doing a cut and shut on the steering knuckles to give the thing more lock. So we'll blow the front wheels off. We'll quickly get some stuff done on the front end. Front wheel bearings on these things are pretty simple. Got to pull the caliper off. So the 2 inner bolts. So there's one there and one at the top. Caliper comes off, hang the caliper up. I normally cable tie it to the spring. Then the disc can get popped off. You knock this cover off and there's a big nut in behind there. Right, got it pretty much all pulled apart, both sides. Sounds awesome. So you've just got the big nut to undo and then the whole thing comes off. This is what the new ones look like. So you just basically bang them back on, get the nut back up and reassemble. I have removed the ABS sensor. You don't need to do that to get the hub and bearing out. But what we're going to do is basically shorten this section of the knuckle, bringing the pivot point of the tie rod end further in, which does give you more steering lock. So we're going to go through now and just remove the tie rod ends. I do not recommend doing this on car, but we're going to do it anyway. And we're basically going to cut about 40 mil out of here. So where that little kick up is there, we'll cut it straight through there, and then we'll end up cutting it just past this this bump part here. And we'll grind a V into all of the joints, and then we'll heat it all up. This is cast, so we'll heat it all up, get it nice and hot with a blowtorch, and then we'll go about MIGging it back together. Rightio, so we got this side cut apart. This is the piece we cut off it. It was actually about 35 mil. Jason's just getting this thing as hot as he can. I've only just put one very small tack on it just to sort of hold it. So while he's heating that up, I'm going to start cutting this side. Get this thing sort of ready as well. And then, we'll just go through and get it all welded up. Just got this side welded up. Smoky. So I've just put the welder on super high setting. And yeah, we actually had it like almost glowing red hot before we welded it. We will just buzz the top and the bottom down flat once it cools off. And Jason's currently heating up the other side, so we'll get that welded up as well. Sweet as, this is the finished result. Just want to point out, disclaimer, I do not recommend doing this yourself. If you want to do it yourself and take the risk, be my guest. But I do not accept any responsibility if your welds break. So that's how they look. I have ground them back, the welds back just a little bit, so it's got a flat surface. They are still piping hot, but I have just given them a squirt of black paint. But anyway, we'll let it cool down a bit and we'll bang all of this stuff back together with the new bearings. Rightio, so I've got it all back together. New wheel bearings and all that are in. And we just pop the wheels back on it just with one nut per side just to see how it looks lock-wise. We're going to pull the wheels back off because there's other stuff we need to do. One thing I forgot to mention, you are supposed to run extended tire ends when you do this. As you move the fulcrum point, it pushes the tires out, so it tows them out, and you need to adjust for that in the alignment. I've just wound it out on the standard tire ends. There's only about 5mm engagement. We did know about that. Jason thought I ordered extended tire ends, and I thought Jason ordered them. So we've ordered them now. They'll be here tomorrow. So we'll sort that out when he gets here. Also, the reason why we didn't go 40mm, so normally when you do the mod where you cut these down, you take about 40mm off. We only took 30 off. And the reason for that is brake lines. We didn't want to change the factory brake lines. As you can see, it's not, look, it's still got some movement in it, but it's starting to get tight. You go much more lock than that and you start running the risk of pulling the brake lines apart. So that's that. So we'll drop it back down, pull the front wheels off and keep going with other stuff. Sweet as, guys. The next thing we're going to do front end related is we're going to put a power steering cooler on it. High revs, a lot of the time, drift cars get very, very hot power steering. We've put a big power steering cooler on the Calais as well. Factory Falcons, this pipe is the cooler. So what we're basically going to do is delete on that. And we're just going to basically pick in off this circuit down here where this low pressure hose goes onto the bottom of the reservoir. We'll intercept that hose, run some hoses around to the front of the car, and then back up to that reservoir. This is the cooler that we're fitting to it. This is just a small automatic transmission cooler, does the same thing. Had this in stock. So we'll find somewhere to mount this and get it on there. Beautiful, cooler is all on. I've just screwed it into the lower panel that goes underneath the rad support and made a little bracket that goes up at the top there. Then we've got the hoses that run across where the factory wiring is down behind the side of the radiator, and they pick up onto the factory locations down there. So one hose goes on there at the bottom of the reservoir, and the other one I've got a barb on it, sort of just there where it went onto the factory cooler. And we've bled up the power steering system as well. So we just started it and just turned the wheel side to side till it was full. Make sure you use the right power steering oil on Falcons, otherwise things go wrong. So we're just going to bang on this brand new second-hand bar that Jason's got for the thing as well. And then front end on this thing is done, and we can move on to the rear suspension. Just like that, the nose of this thing is complete. The whole time Jason's owned this car, it's never had a bar on it. So looking really, really good. So we're basically done for the front end, except for the tire ends, which we'll throw on tomorrow morning when they come in. So now we're going to lift the thing up and get started pulling the rear end out of it. Now, there is a reason why we're not putting the engine in yet. It's because a good friend of ours has the engine crane who's currently using it today. And we'll have that back tomorrow around lunchtime. So that's why we're just sort of smashing through what we can for now. So yes, I do realize priority one would be the engine, but we're just making hay while the sun shines, doing other things that we know need to be done. So we're going to pull the K-frame out of this thing to do blade bushes, which are up in there. We need to do the diff bushes, the 3 diff bushes. So that one, the one up in there, and the one on the back here. And we're going to do a few other bits and pieces. I'm not going to film too much of pulling the cradle out of this thing, as I did recently release a video on how to do all of these bushes and stuff. So make sure you check that out. So we're just going to punch through as quickly as we can to get the K-frame out of this thing, and I'll show you what we're doing. And so this is where we're up to. Whole K-frame is out of the car, obviously. Jason has been around and painted the brake calipers pink because it's punk. So they now look like that. So that's all that, and we've got a bunch of stuff going into this, which I'll show you in a sec. I've also sorted out the front tire ends for now. I couldn't get the extended ones. They're on back order. So what I've done is I've just ordered some Standard replacement ones, I cut 10 mil off the old ones and just welded on to the new ones just for now. So that's that. So as far as the back of the car goes, this is what we've got going on. Petter's urethane blade arm bush kit. Petter's urethane full diff bush kit with the rear bush and the front bushes. Got some new wheel nuts. We have rear lower control arm camber adjustment washers because one of them's missing on that. We have heavy duty sway bar links. So that's that. We also have the replacement sway bar, which we're not going to use. The standard sway bar is 19 mil. We're going with an upgraded Whiteline 24 mil. So we did spend a little bit of money on getting that. When I put the upgraded sway bar in the back of the Calais, I found it made a massive difference to how the back end of the car behaved. So we're going that. We have some eBay special slotted and dimpled rotors to go on the back. Again, found with having standard rotors on the back, once you pull the handbrake several times and the back brakes get hot, it was really affecting the efficiency of the handbrake. So we're going to throw them on the back as well. And then the first big ticket expensive item is this. So we're going to put an M80 diff in this thing with 4-1 gears and a mini spool. There is an M86 diff, which is bigger than this, which is the XR6 turbos and XR8s run, but they have a different spline CV shaft and they're also a little bit longer. So you've got to run a shorter tail shaft. You can get away with running the standard one, but it's not ideal. So that's going to be a massive improvement over stock. I've got 411 gears with a full spool in the Calais. And yeah, it works really, really well. Yes, I know that Fords and Holdens are geared completely differently, but anyway, so we're going to throw that in as well. So that's that. And then we've got some short urethane bump stops as well. So these are secondhand, but they're still in really good condition. So we're going to blow all this thing apart, get all of this stuff in the K-frame, and then we'll check back in with you. All right, guys, after much faffing around, it ended up taking us about 5.5 hours because we were waiting on stuff and there was a couple of issues. We've got the rear K-frame ready to go back in. So the issue we had was this is actually a V8 cradle. So it turns out some of the early BAs did run a V8 cradle and some of them even ran a V8 diff, which this one didn't have. This had the 6-cylinder diff. The difference is there is a sleeve that comes on the front of this K-frame, which we had to cut back in order to use the bushes that we had. And also the ear, this ear here that bolts to the side of the diff that goes through to the back of the bush that the bolt threads into, that's got about a 25 mil standoff going forward into the back of the bush, which we had to cut down. The bolt is threaded into the ear, so we did cut off 25 mil of the thread, what the bolt engages into. So we have put a nut in there as well and a washer, just to make sure that's as tight as it can be. Besides from that, everything else went fairly smoothly. We've got the Urethane rear bush in. We have the bump stops in. We've got the sway bar links on. We can't put the sway bar in because the transmission jack's in the way. Blade bushes are in and our front diff bushes are in. And of course our 4-1 diff is in and that's filled with oil as well. We've also got our rotors on and I've adjusted up the handbrake in there as well. So that's all good. So now all we've got to do is back in the car. Fantastic, guys. Everything under here is all buttoned up. Underneath the back of the car is done. Everything is all looking good and schmancy like it should. Yes, we know suspension would be a good upgrade to do on this thing, especially while we had the K-frame out. It's even easier to do. But we are going to be running standard shocks and springs front and rear just for now because this is a budget build. But believe me when I tell you, you'll be surprised the difference just bushes and a sway bar can do. It completely transforms how the car behaves. And we've also got the sway bar on the stiffer setting as well. So that's that. All we've got to do now is put wheels and tyres on it and put it on the ground. But for wheels and tyres, this is what we had on the back before. We had mismatched wheels. We had actually mismatched alloys on the back, but this one kept going down. So we threw this one on, this steely on it. And then we had FG XR6 wheels on the front. These wheels are now going to go on the back. And for the front, we're going to be running these guys. So pretty much the same wheel as what I've got on the front of my VY, but obviously in Ford stud pattern. They are a +30 offset and they have been wrapped in some Nankang tyres. Not really a track orientated tyre, but they are still a fairly soft compound. So looking forward to seeing how the car looks with them on it. So let's get wheels on it, get it on the ground and see how it all looks. You excited, bro?
I'm very excited.
Fantastic. Rightio, we've got the thing on the ground and it's all looking as good as it can for a standard height Falcon. We're having a look at steering lock as well and it's got some Well, it's got more than it did before, so that's good. Before I get you on with what Jason's playing with inside, one other thing we did before we dropped this thing down on the ground is we modified the brackets for the upper control arms. So these brackets here, we've actually, it's a bit hard to see, but we've re-drilled the holes slightly lower and slightly further in, about 15 mil, and then we've plated it with a washer on the inside and outside, and that gives them a couple of degrees of camber, as there isn't really much you can do camber-wise in this. So that's that, and we've got about another hour or so left before we're going to call it for a day. So Jason's inside playing around, trying to get some wires run to fit a couple of gauges up on the dash there, and I'm playing around with wiring in the engine bay. I'm putting the smaller of the two thermofans on a switch through a relay, so I've already mounted the relay and started running some wires. Still got to run some wires inside the car and all that. And as far as gauges, he's doing oil pressure, which is, I'd say, very important for a drift car, and he's also doing boost just because he's got that gauge and he's doing it for fun. So we'll only read on vacuum. But yeah, so just going to finish doing some wiring and then button it up for the night. Alrighty, so wiring side of things is pretty much done. We've got the gauges mounted and wired up. They're not connected to anything under the bonnet. The wires are just hanging there. So we'll worry about that once the new engine's in. I've got a relay mounted for the other fan and a switch put in down under the dash down here. So we flick that on. Our smaller of the two thermofans works, and everything is on ignition power as well. So if we get anything on, as soon as you hit the key, everything will turn off. The only other thing we're going to do inside wise tonight is we've got a fire extinguisher down there that we'll just find somewhere to mount it. And besides from that, Jason is just wire wheeling up the second-hand extractors that we've got. He's going to give them a squirt of paint, let them dry overnight. So that's it. Engine crane got dropped off just before by our mate. So we are all green lights for tomorrow morning to do the engine swap. But I'm going to end the episode here because I don't want this episode to get too long. We've smashed through heaps on this thing today and we're pretty beat. We started on early this morning, but yeah, we'll just end it here. And you'll see, even though we're going to work on this tomorrow, you'll probably see that episode in a week or two. So please remember to like and subscribe. And until we see you guys in the next video, be good to yourselves and each other.